Jonathan Macri, you have done it again. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS. Pleasure to have you all here with me on another tremendous opportunity graced to me by John Macri after another terrific New York Knicks basketball game. The Knicks lose to the Chicago Bulls. Don't have the final score in front of me. They gave up 1,000 points. They scored a lot of points, but they gave up 1,000 and lost their second game in a row, second night of a back-to-back, traveled from OKC to Chicago on Derrick Rose night. Thank you, GMAC. The final score was 139 to 126. I'm digesting a lot. As you guys probably know by now, I could not watch the OKC game live. So I watched that, most of it, before the Chicago game started, and then I finished the game during halftime of the Chicago game. So I'm digesting a lot of minutes of basketball at once. I think that these two games should be analyzed in some ways as a one single unit, because there's no question that this one was impacted by the OKC game. I think we can talk about both. The super chats, we can discuss both, because I do think they should be talked about as a unit. This specific game is just, I have a hard time blaming the players for being a step slow against an explosive offensive team at times. Like, Chicago shoots a gazillion threes, and when they make a lot of them, you can be made to look bad as a defense. And if you are a step slow, and that often manifests in a back-to-back in the second half, especially after kind of a long halftime delay with the Rose ceremony. Wasn't shocking at all to see them come out so poorly in the third quarter. They got destroyed in the third quarter. That's where the game was lost. So on a traveling back-to-back, after the insane amount of minutes that the starters played against OKC, none of this should be terribly surprising, and I'm not going to rip into the players for performing the way they did tonight. I think that would be irresponsible, frankly. I'm sure we will talk about the minutes load and what the degree to which the coach is to blame, the degree to which the front office is to blame, what needs to be done to rectify it from both a coaching and a front office perspective. And I think from the player perspective too, what the bench guys can do better to earn more trust so that they can play more. I think all of that should be part of the conversation for this game, because, again, hard to analyze this one without the context of the OKC game last night. Obviously, we're hoping Karl-Anthony Towns is okay. It didn't seem particularly serious to me. I don't know what it was. I don't think there was... I'm sure we're going to get some stuff about how he shouldn't have been out there at that point in the game. He obviously went on a crazy individual scoring binge there to get the game to a reasonable point with 5-6 minutes left, and continued that even as the Bulls made a couple plays to kind of put it away. Should he have been pulled right there? I don't think that's the argument. I can be more convinced by the argument that it's just too many minutes, and eventually there's going to be a cost. How you measure that cost, whether there's data supporting the direct correlation between minutes and injuries, I think it's certainly fair to at least wonder and question the load that have been put on the starting five specifically, and to wonder if it's crossed the line of irresponsible to play guys 40 plus minutes consistently in December and January, now rolling into January. So that should be part of the conversation. I'm not going to run away from it. I am positive people will want to talk about it, and we will. I will be try to be fair. I try to be humble, because I don't know. Again, like, there's only so much data that we're given and have access to. I'm not on the training staff or the coaching staff. Only so much I can know about how the players are feeling. So there's, it's a difficult conversation to have because of the limited insight we have into it. I can watch every single possession and know precisely what's going on the basketball court when they're between the lines. But what happens outside those lines, I can't speak to with any great degree of intelligence or insight. But I will do the best I can, and we can certainly talk about it. You know, I don't know how much it's worth discussing the individual performances. Obviously, both Cat and Brunson had portions of this game where they were completely unstoppable offensively. Those guys need the wings to be exceptional defensively in order to cover up their flaws, and I just didn't think they were really on their P's and Q's tonight on that end. And I give Chicago credit. They're, again, explosive offensive team, made a ton of threes in that third quarter. Did the Knicks cover them particularly well? No. And Vooch is tough in the pick and roll. He's a tough cover. So certainly no questions about the Knicks offense from this game. The defense was exposed. Based on the progress they've made over the course of the last month and a half, we haven't really seen something like this in a long time. Even the way they played against OKC. I mean, OKC scored okay in that game, fairly efficiently, but I thought the Knicks did a lot of good things defensively in that game. I would view this defensive performance in isolation as more of a blip than a trend. This is a team got hot on the second night of a back-to-back against you, and they have the potential to put up a night like that, and you saw it. Yeah, kind of a weird one to break down, but we'll do the best we can. Hat tip again to Macri for giving me another gem. But I think we can come out of this, hopefully by the end of the night, with at least the ability to kind of talk out again this weekend as a unit. OKC plus Chicago, what it means, what's the next step for this team? Because just like taking a step back away from a kind of wild back-to-back nights of ball games, Knicks are in a good spot, assuming everyone's healthy, assuming Cat's healthy. Knicks are in a good spot. They remain in a good spot. These two games don't fundamentally alter the position that they are in. What they might have done is expose the lack of depth or the lack of coaching trust, depending on how you frame it. Expose that and put that into the limelight in a way that it wasn't before against the cupcake schedule that was December for the Knicks, right? So like this issue now comes to the forefront and needs to kind of probably be addressed sooner than later. As the minutes pile up, the schedule gets harder. And so if Tibbs didn't trust Campaign and Shamet against Washington, he's not going to trust them against OKC next Friday night either. Right? Like nothing's changing. The players are the players. So if he didn't have trust in these guys against the bad schedule, as the schedule gets tougher, what indicates that he's going to start trusting them now? And are we willing to just run these guys out there for 40 plus minutes a night every night in January? It seems like a bad idea, right? It seems like a bad idea. So how does it get addressed? Let's talk about it. So that is all I have to say about this one. I am looking forward to hearing from all of you. I am going to try to keep it even keeled. Again, this loss is not particularly bothersome to me. It is understandable. It is explainable. What it means for the future and how this team can now get to the next step of its development, I think, is the more important and interesting conversation. And let's get to the chats, shall we?
First, hi, Benjy.
Hey.
I didn't know if you were going to go through some individual performances, so that's my bad for not paying attention. We need to talk about the signature moment of the game presented by Autograph. If that's okay. Do you have one in mind off the top of your head?
Here's the one I have in mind. Knicks are up. Knicks are down 8. Precious Achiuwa drives the baseline, throws a bounce pass across court to Landry Shamet right in the pocket. He rises to shoot. Out of nowhere, Campaign stumbles, kind of wandering aimlessly on the baseline, hits Kobe White's legs, and they call an offensive foul, which negates a Landry Shamet 3 that would have cut it to 5 and made things particularly interesting. That was a huge play in the game. I am a little confused. I agree with the foul call, even though I don't think it mattered because I think Shamet was going to make the shot, but you can't, even if you're not paying attention, you can't run into a guy trying to contest 3. What I'm not positive about, and I need to maybe look up the rule, is I thought Shamet was already gathering to shoot. So if it's the case that on a defensive foul in that situation, it would have been an and one. Like, let's say White had fouled Payne as Shamet is gathering to shoot. That counts as an and one, and Payne would get a free throw. But is it not the case that on an offensive foul, it also works with the gather? I guess not, but I was wondering that. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
The Hartenstein foul or offense or you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
A couple years ago in the playoffs, when Brunson hits the three, Bam runs over Hartenstein, and they reviewed it to see if the foul happened before the shot. And
but it's not before the shot; it's before the shooting motion, right? That's
before the shooting motion.
Yeah,
and they ruled that even though it kind of looked on camera that he hadn't happened before, it had happened before, and the shot shouldn't count. They ruled that it should count. I'm assuming that the rule is that if it's an offensive foul, it negates the play.
It negates the play totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the only caveat is if they had wanted to, they could have ruled it that the shot counts, and then it's a loose ball foul,
right,
on campaign, and then it like goes back the other way.
That's right, but I don't think it would matter. The shooting motion would only matter if it was an and one situation. But that was So I thought that was if there's a key moment of the game, other than the 19 threes that the Bulls made in the third quarter, that made up number. I don't know how many they actually made, but it felt like 19.
I hate to say it, Benji, but that's the key moment, the signature moment of the actual basketball game.
Yeah,
the actual breakdown of the flow of the game. Sure, the signature moment potentially going forward. We'll see what happens when we get a report from Knicks Medical. Happened with 1:34 left in the game, with the Knicks down 12 and Karl-Anthony Towns falling and coming up limp and then limping off the court. Like, that's just like what the signature moment of this game and maybe one of the signature moments of this season is going to end up being, depending on what we find out.
Easy. That's why I'm not going there. Would you take a deep breath?
I am setting a tone for your super chats, Benji. This is what is going to have to be discussed.